It's once again time for another edition of Ask Chuck Dixon. This is where you, just some person out there in cyberspace, get to ask me, a comic book writer of world renown and long-standing. You get to ask me questions about what I do for a living. And what do I do for a living, everyone? I write comic books. So before we get to anything else, you should go to Discord and look for spinrack.io. I swear I'll put the link in this week. And if you go to spinrack.io on Discord, there's all kinds of tutorials and contacts and essays and all kinds of stuff about comics. Contributed by myself and Graham Nolan, because SpinRack, we are SpinRack. We didn't license our stuff to SpinRack. We are SpinRack. It's a multimedia company based on intellectual property created by Graham and I, both separately and individually and togetherly. And if you go there, especially if you're a wannabe comic book creator, writer, letterer, colorist, inker, penciler, whatever it is you want to do in comics, we'll take a look at your stuff and give you some valuable criticism from seasoned professionals, mainly Graham and I. And some people have already contributed some stuff. I'm starting to see a little bit more traffic. Hopefully we can direct more there. We're really trying to build a community. And I know you get to ask me questions here, but it's not really a direct connection, is it? And you can get that direct connection at Discord. Look for spinrack.io. Now, here's a question people keep asking. I got so many questions. What do you think of Garth Ennis's Punisher, huh? What do you think, huh? Okay, huh? I suspect some of you honestly want to know what I think of Garth Ennis's run on Punisher, very successful run on Punisher. And then some of you, I think, are just poking the bear. You're trolling a little bit. Yeah, I bet he hates it. And he's going to spew all over Garth. He's going to just rip him apart. Because there's some of you out there who really like videos where someone tears a creator limb from limb. Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you. So I think Garth Ennis's run is a good one. It's solid. It's mean. It's nasty. He entirely gets the character, which so many writers don't. I think he's the only recent writer, post me, who really understands the Punisher, who likes Frank Castle, and really delve into all the things that make Frank Castle a special character. And I mean, Garth is a perfect fit. Garth is an expert at writing deconstructed plot lines. Plot lines where basically just everything goes wrong, total chaos, and somebody's got to straighten it out in the most direct and usually violent manner possible. So, nothing but mad respect for what Garth did on the character. It also helps that he, in print and to my face, has told me that I was his main influence on writing the character, that my work on the Punisher was his favorite and influenced him the most. And he called me a diamond geezer, which I found out later is a compliment. I'm not dissing on Garth. He did a good job. I can't say that for anybody else. And don't ask me about any of them, because I'm not going to start tearing up my fellow creators here on YouTube just for your amusement. Are you not entertained? Okay, next question. Robert Dungato, can you tell us anything about Xenozoic tales, one time better known as Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, that maybe we hadn't heard somewhere else on the interwebs? If you've never seen Xenozoic tales, or Cadillac and Dinosaurs as it was renamed, because so many people didn't know what the hell Xenozoic meant, it's Mark Schultz's homage, if you will, to like the work of Frank Frazetta, Edgar Rice Burroughs, Al Williamson. It's just a crazy, nutty trip back in time, trip to another dimension, featuring, a stalwart, square-jawed hero and a hot-looking brunette, and lots of guns, and of course their famous Cadillac, tons of dinosaurs, and it's all done in Mark's just incredible illustrative style, very much influenced by Fujita and Williamson and guys of that ilk. And just terrific stuff. And did I mention it's a hot brunette, isn't it? A lot. But yeah, it's a fun series, and I think it's been reprinted recently. I mean, Dennis Kitchen did a terrific hardcover set of them a few years back. But apparently there's a new edition out, and I'm not sure which publisher is doing it since Dennis doesn't publish anymore. He has retired. And it's funny that you asked me about this because I recently bought the artist edition. I was on a leisurely drive from Pennsylvania to Florida, and my son and I stopped by Annapolis to a store called Third Eye Comics, and they had a great price on this artist edition, so I picked it up. Third Eye Comics is, if you live in the Maryland, Virginia area, wow, that store is amazing. It is a jam-packed with really cool stuff, really cool deals. One of the more impressive comic shops I've ever seen. The only store I've seen recently akin to it is Emerald City down here in Tampa. Actually, I think St. Pete or Largo, whatever. Tampa Bay area, as we say here when we're confused and we're not sure where we are. Now, is there anything I can tell you haven't heard before? Well, one really geeky story. Xenozoic Tales, and it's under its other name, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, spawned a cartoon series and a toy line and an arcade game. And one night, Flynn Henry and I, my buddy Flynn Henry and I, we were wandering around the King of Prussia Mall, and we stopped in the arcade, and there it was, brand new, just installed, the Cadillacs and Dinosaur game. And we shoved so many quarters into that thing, it was crazy. And we were having the time of our lives, and we decided to call Mark Schultz and tell him about our gaming experience. Because we both knew Mark from going to conventions. Mark's just an awesome guy, as well as an awesome talent. Just a super nice guy. And we called him, and I just think we just confused him. Because we were just so excited about playing this game, and so excited for him that, there was some cha-ching, some coinage dropped into the Schultz bank account from the terrific success he had from, what started out as a labor of love for him to create this comic series. I don't think he ever imagined that it would have the impact that it had. Okay. We got a Dungato double spin. He's spinning that wheel again. What about Winsor McCay and his Little Nemo and its influences on comics to this day? Well, Winsor McCay, if you don't know, he was a cartoonist. He worked for William Randolph Hearst in the Hearst newspapers. And he did a weekly strip called Little Nemo in Slumberland. And his influence on comic artists today is undeniable. Because I really think, unless somebody can prove me wrong, somebody can show me something that appeared before McCay, Winsor McCay is really the first comic artist to deal cinemagraphically with the comic medium. To tell, as you can see here, he does this little set piece, and it's all very much visually told. I mean, the characters are talking, but they're generally asides that aren't necessary to the action, and it's very much told like a film. It's a movie on paper, which is, the effect McCay was going for. And his work really advanced the comic medium to new levels. He raised the bar for every comic artist because, up to this point, comic strips in America were largely just characters in panels talking. And the gags and the laughs were all in the word balloons, not in the visuals at all. And the word balloons really carried the story, with the panel art just sort of being added value. Now, the reason that I think that his comics were cinematographic is because McCay was also a filmmaker. He made a lot of some of the earliest, maybe the earliest animated films. One of the most famous and most popular for him was Gertie the Dinosaur. And Gertie the Dinosaur was, as you can see, dinosaur, black and white, silent film. These were done, prior to World War I. And McKay would tour from city to city showing these films. And not only that, but he animated them so he could be on stage live and interact with the projected image. So he would be up there interacting with Gertie the dinosaur and the various characters in his cartoons. And extraordinarily successful. Big moneymaker for this guy. Was also an innovator in that he made the world's first dramatic animated feature. He made an animated movie about the sinking of the Lusitania. It's very much a propaganda film, encouraging, with the aid of William Randolph Hearst, encouraging the United States to enter the war in France during World War I. And so McKay made this, very, very moving, very, in parts disturbing, animated propaganda film about the sinking of the Lusitania. It was very effective in swaying public opinion because audiences went to the movies and saw this thing. They were like, yeah, we got to go get those Germans. Now, on another totally geeky aside, this is a video full of geeky asides. When I used to live in Media, Pennsylvania, and I ran into somebody who said, hey, there's a guy here, he collects comic stuff too. He's got a big original art collection. You should go meet him. So I went over and met this guy. He lived in a fabulous house. He was a number of years older than I was. I think he was in his 60s when I met him. This would have been back in the 80s. And he had a jaw-dropping collection. He had a room full of flat files, full of art. And most of it was early comic strip art and things like that. But one of the things he had in many, many, many drawers was every cell, every hand-drawn cell from Sinking of the Lusitania. All, of course, hand-drawn and inked by Winsor McKay himself. He had the entire film in drawers, every single cell from the film. And it filled like 2 flat files. Just amazing. So that was my little geeky aside, my little connection by several degrees of separation from Winsor McKay. Hey, it's a triple spin for Roberto. Here we go. Same question, but the subject is Monsieur Robert Crumb. That's fitting. He lives in France. Do you think one can see or perceive his influence on contemporary work, or has he been mostly forgotten on the mainstream by younger creators? I think Crumb is largely forgotten by people who weren't alive when Crumb was a big thing. That's a sad, because I don't know how much, I don't think he has any influence on modern comic book creators. I don't see anybody aping his style or trying to do what Crumb does, which is understandable because so much of what Crumb did was deeply personal. He was very much idiosyncratic, very much an iconoclast in his art as well as his life, personal life. He was a different breed of geek. If you're not familiar with Robert Crumb, well, you are, even if you aren't. Keep on Trucking was a big thing. Mr. Natural in the 60s and 70s. You saw Crumb imagery everywhere, even when it wasn't drawn by Crumb. But you just never sought to be loved, never went to a comic book convention, held comics, mainstream comics in particular, in complete contempt. He was doing his own thing. He was just doing his own thing. I got to respect that. He did every kind of comic. He did trading cards of blues players, very, very much into blues artists from the 20s and 30s. Apparently has like this enormous record collection. But for me, I liked when he was funny, and he could be very, very funny. His strips could be, howlingly funny. My favorite character of all only ever appeared in one story. He's Rough Tough Cream Puff, and in case you didn't know, he don't take no guff when he struts his stuff. And another one that really cracked me up was his cover for Despair. I just love the idea that there would be a comic book called Despair, and the cover gag never fails to get a laugh out of me. Roberto, he's going for it. Quadruple spin. Were Bud Spencer and Terence Hill films ever a thing during your youth? I've met many an American with no idea who they were, despite filming so much of their stuff stateside. Yeah, they played Americans a lot. My first exposure to Terence Hill and subsequently Bud Spencer, because he was also in these movies, was the Trinity films. Trinity, if you don't know, he was featured in a number of spaghetti westerns, and he was the laziest cowboy hero of them all. As you can see here, he can't even be bothered to ride his horse. He would nap while laying on a travois, and the horse would just drag him wherever the horse wanted to go. I remember going to see these movies at the theater with my dad, and both of us cracking up because they were funny movies. And of course, Bud Spencer plays Trinity's brother. Trinity in the movies is the left hand of the devil because he's so fast on the draw, and Bud Spencer is his brother, who is the right hand of the devil. And these two had a real chemistry. You had this good-looking matinee idol kind of guy who was also an excellent comic actor. With this big, bluff, chubby guy as his sidekick or partner. And it was a good mix. And they made a number of movies. And as you said, they shot a lot of them here, basically playing Americans. But most of these were distributed only in Europe. I remember a few of these would make it into the grindhouses in the Philadelphia area. But they were generally in the grindhouses that I was warned were dangerous to go into. So I never saw one of their Italian films other than the Trinity movies on the big screen. I did, however, follow Terence Hill's career as they were trying to make him into an international star. And I remember going to see March or Die and enjoying it very much. I rewatched it recently. It's an excellent Foreign Legion action film, also starring Gene Hackman and Catherine Deneuve. And I really like that. And another film, Mr. Billion, which I don't remember a lot about. It was kind of a chase comedy with Jackie Gleason and Terence Hill. And if I remember right, Valerie Perrine was the love interest. That was the 80s. Hey, what do you know? First time ever, Roberto hits the quintuple spin. Ever read Calvin and Hobbes? If yes, what can you tell us about it from your veteran analysis? I liked Calvin and Hobbes. I followed it religiously, dailies and Sundays, and I liked a lot of things about it. I mean, it's whimsical and funny. Very, very often a very funny strip, and obviously owed a lot to Peanuts in that it explores the secret life of a child. And that's what, to me, Peanuts did best. The only thing that's missing from Calvin and Hobbes that Peanuts had is poignancy. Peanuts had a level of pathos that's absent in Calvin and Hobbes, probably intentionally. And Calvin has nothing in common with Charlie Brown at all. He has a lot more in common with Dennis the Menace in that he's very self-assured, very self-centered, very self-interested, and he lets nothing get between him and his goals. So he's not neurotic in any way. He's very much like a child. If you remember your own youth, how fearless you were. You can probably think back to your own youth and get chills up your spine, thinking of things that you had done as a kid that you would never risk doing today as an adult, because kids don't understand the risks. They don't care, or they don't even think about it at all. And as you can see, I can't find a better example of Winsor McKay's influence on comics, because we were talking about McKay earlier, than things that Bill Watterson did in Calvin and Hobbes. Here is a very, very cinematic sequence of panels, could have been in Little Nemo. So Watterson, obviously a student of the comic strip and the art form. I mean, the strip was well crafted throughout. consistently good, consistently funny. And that's not easy to do day after day after day, 7 days a week. My only problem with Calvin and Hobbes is actually Wooderson himself. At the peak of his success, and he had enormous success. I mean, this guy went from like 300 papers to 1,200 papers in a year. I mean, he had a growth spurt on this strip that was amazing. I mean, everybody liked this strip. Now, one thing I like about Wooderson and I respect, for whatever reason, he resisted any merchandising at all. And he had offers to merchandise to make dolls of Calvin Hobbes and toys of Calvin Hobbes and t-shirts and stickers and mugs. And he resisted all. He didn't want that. He just wanted the strip to be the strip to speak for itself. He turned down crazy offers to make animated films, animated TV specials of Calvin Hobbes, and he said he wouldn't do it because he said he thought that when they animated the Peanut stuff, they kind of stole it from Charles Schulz, so that millions of people were exposed to Charlie Brown and company through the cartoons, not through reading it as a strip. And he said, I don't want to, I want the people to have Calvin and Hobbes' voices in their head the way they hear them in their head. And I don't want them to be hearing some actor's voice. And you got to respect the guy, because he literally turned down probably hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. I mean, Schulz, when Schulz died, he was like the third wealthiest entertainer in the world. I mean, he had crazy money because he licensed the wazoo out of all of it. And I think Schulz and Wooderson had a different viewpoint on how to do this stuff. Schulz was interested in, his own community and bringing money to his own community. I mean, he built an ice skating rink for his town and all this kind of stuff. And also, I think he wanted Charlie Brown to get out there to as many people as possible. Wooderson just wanted them to read it in the newspaper, read it in the collections. But the problem I have with Wooderson is that at the peak of his career, at the peak of his success from his lofty heights, he condemned a lot of other comic strip creators. He said that, some of these guys had been at it too long and their strips were tired and nobody cared about them and they needed to be taken out of the paper and make room for more creative people. Unfortunately, there wasn't like a whole army of more creative people ready to take the place of Dick Brown and Mort Walker and people like that. Also, I mean, he particularly railed against Mort Walker and Dick Brown. Hagar the Horrible and Beetle Bailey, and he said these strips had their day, they should be gone. But the problem is that you have people that read those strips for decades. They get their morning, once upon a time, I don't think this happens anymore. You got the morning paper and you read the comic strips over breakfast. And if Beetle Bailey wasn't there, you got upset about it. Every newspaper that ever canceled Nancy and Sluggo found out a lot of people read Nancy and Sluggo. So they would cancel Nancy and Sluggo and then get inundated with phone calls and letters. And they would have to bring Nancy and Sluggo back every single time. But, even I would look at Nancy and Sluggo and go, who reads this? Who thinks this is funny? But Bill Wooderson got militant about it. And I thought, that's really not right, because even if you don't respect Mort Walker, and Beetle Bailey did over time not age well. I mean, it was a very funny strip for a long time, and then Walker's just kind of phoning it in, kind of retreading, and there's no denying that. Okay? But he was handing his work in on time. He was always there. He and his sons assisting him. So, you got to think, okay, this guy was holding a place for me, right? He was on the newspaper comic strip page, holding his own, decade after decade after decade, until I got here. Okay. So he's been in the trenches all this time. I'm not going to dump on the guy. I respect the people who came before me. I work in their shadow. And some guys lose it after a while and don't know when to get out of the game. But, hey, they're still in the game. They were successful in their day. You can't go dissing them the way Wooderson dissed his contemporaries in the business. I just think it's odd. It's just odd. Why be vocal about something like that? And if you feel that way, just keep it to yourself. Gentle Savage, what kind of music are you a fan of? Well, that's a loaded question. Everybody thinks that they're like the most eclectic. I like all kinds of music. I'm really eclectic. Well, I'm the same way. I'm really eclectic. I'm recently in my playlist. I got playlist on shuffle. I got I can't even remember how many tracks. Tens of thousands. Amy Mann, I like Amy Mann. Pops up. The Kinks, love the Kinks. Just Lola popped up again for the umpteenth time, and I still marvel at how brilliant that song is. Ray Charles, listen to a lot of Ray Charles, both country, western, pop, rhythm and blues. This guy did it all, and always worth listening to. Steel Eye Span, a group that will send my wife running from the room. Steel Eye Span basically specialize in English folk music from the medieval period and Renaissance period. And, it's not everyone's cup of tea. Saw them live once, though. Awesome show. And country western, I listen to country western. Miranda Lambert, I like her lyrics. I don't know if she writes her own songs or not, but whatever song she sings, the lyrics are very clever. And I think that's what's missing. I hate modern country pop music, and because they just sort of do a turn of phrase and beat it to death for 3 minutes. Miranda Lambert's stories tend to tell a story. They tend to be going somewhere. They're like old George Jones or Porter Wagner stories where they're going somewhere. There's going to be a surprise or some sort of twist or turn in the tale at the end of the song. And I like her stuff a lot, and I like tons of other stuff. Bing Crosby and the Andrews Sisters. I have a collection of all of their recordings, even their rehearsal recordings, which some of them are hysterically funny as they muff lines or ad lib stuff that at the time would not pass any kind of censorship. They would not be able to be played on the radio. So Bing and the Andrews Sisters are a great mix. If you're just familiar with Bing Crosby, I don't know, about whatever association you have with Bing Crosby, or you've heard the name and don't know who the guy is, he really changed the music industry entirely. Before him, everybody was trying to sound like an opera star, even in pop music. And here comes Bing just singing in his natural speaking voice. And his phrasing and his casual approach to the music made him the first true American musical superstar. I mean, you can't overestimate how huge he was. He was the Beatles and Elvis all rolled into one in the 30s and 40s. And I love the anytime he teams up with the Andrews Sisters, who were the go-to female trio, close harmony trio. And anyway, that's it. My weird musical taste. Everybody's got weird musical taste. You can't tell anything by somebody's musical collection. It's a personal thing. It's an interior ego id thing. I don't know how to describe it. Hey, twin spin for Gentle Savage. Also, when it comes to villains and heroes you've created, aside from yourself, which writers and comics do you think have done the best job in handling characters you created? Well, Bane would be the number one because he keeps popping up everywhere, written by, everybody. He, much to my surprise and Graham Nolan's surprise, the guy has earned a permanent place in Batman's Rogues Gallery. So he pops up in, games and comics and toys and movies and TV shows constantly, which pleases us. And a reward for all our hard work. 3 writers have done a great job continuing Bane's career, because obviously my telling of the tale of Bane got interrupted by leaving DC, so I couldn't write any more Bane stories. Scott Beatty, Tony Bedard, Gail Simone all wrote Bane perfectly, to my mind. And what all 3 have in common is they called me on the phone. How about that? They called the creator of the character on the phone. They asked questions because they wanted to get it right. And that's rare and awesome. I did the same thing when I was doing, when I was on Batman, and I would use animated characters created by Paul Dini. I would call him first and basically ask his permission, because because he worked in animation, he gets nothing. He gets no participation. I mean, they can make 1 million Condiment King toys, and Paul Dini gets nothing but maybe a tip of the hat. But I would always call him, is it okay with you if I use this character? And he would say, yes, yes, please, because you're making him canon now. You're moving him into the comic book realm, because I did Lockup, I did Condiment King, and famously Harley Quinn became part of not because of me, but Harley Quinn became canon in the Batman comic book universe. But I always thought, it's only courtesy to call Paul and ask him first. Okay, Gentle Savage gets a triple spin. Everybody's getting lucky today. Okay, and finally, which fictional comic book city, e.g. Metropolis, Gotham, Coast City, etc., do you think is the best in terms of aesthetic, and do you think would be the coolest to live in? I think the coolest to live in would be Metropolis, because it looks like a happy, sunny place. It looks like a very modern, cosmopolitan city. And plus, if anything goes wrong, you got Superman. If your car falls in the lake or your cat's up a tree, call Superman. He's there. He shows up and he makes everything right. On the flip side, you got Gotham, and Batman, love Batman, but he generally shows up after everything's gone wrong. He's there to pick up the pieces, and those pieces might be you. Plus, it's a dismal place. It's full of crime. It seems to always be raining. It seems to have longer nights than any other city in comics. And it seems like a really crappy place to live. I would not want to live in Gotham. Now, an interesting city, I wouldn't want to live there, but it'd be interesting to visit, would be the bottle city of Kandor. Kandor, the last surviving city of Krypton, shrunk down into a bottle. What a cool concept. I mean, what a crazy, nutty, ridiculous concept. And that's what I love about it. So visiting Kandor would literally be like visiting, not only going back in time, but going back in time on another planet. So how cool would that be to visit that place? But as I said, I wouldn't want to live there. I'd feel like an outsider, and you'd probably have to learn Kryptonian. Okay. Matt Strott, I have a Lancaster question for you. I'm wondering if Lancaster has an Amish mafia. It's a good thing they don't have technology, or I might fear the repercussions of asking such a question. Yes, I can say it's safe to say that no Amish person will read that post or see this video at all. No, there is no Amish mafia, although the Amish in their community do have power over the members of their sect, and it is a religious sect. There's different kinds of Amish, and they all have different rules, and you can tell the difference between them by literally the colors of their shirts and the kind of hats they wear. So you learn these over time if you live in Lancaster or places like that. But the Amish have the power to shun. They don't have the power to have you whacked, but they have the power to make you disappear from their society. So they will shun you, and you are no longer part of the Amish community, and nobody can talk to you, and nobody can correspond with you, and you are out, baby. You are banished. You're not swimming with the fishes. You're out there hanging with the English, and you're no longer welcome at the dinner table. The other thing that the Amish have in common with the mafia, or the only thing really, is they pay for everything in cash. I talked to realtors in my area when I lived in Lancaster and the southern part of Chester County. Amish cover they have a big footprint in Pennsylvania, all the way down into northern Maryland. You'll see Amish. Anyway, this realtor told me that when the Amish buy a farm or buy land or buy a house, they pay cash, which means it looks like a scene from Miami Vice. They literally show up with a case full of cash at settlement. And the money is handed over, much like a drug deal. So, and the other thing about the Amish, the things, because I've lived around Amish most of my life, the thing that people don't understand about them, there's a lot of things they don't understand. Number one is, they're like afraid of technology or averse to technology. No, they will use technology. Most Amish communities have a telephone. It's usually mounted on a pole between a number of farms. So in an emergency, they will use a telephone. Also, I mean, I owned a property where I needed a barn roof replaced. Well, when you need a barn roof replaced, there ain't nobody better than the Amish. They're going to do an awesome job. They're tremendous carpenters, and they work fast. But they don't use power tools. But they do bring along a guy who will use power tools. And so they figure out what they need drilled, what they need sawn, and that guy does it. And he's usually the guy who drives them to the construction site. They will ride in a car. The other thing about the Amish is they are not poor. There was unfortunately, a mass shooting at an Amish school a number of years ago, and people began sending money because they saw the Amish riding in buggies and plowing their fields with horses, and they assume from that they have no money. I was like, no, they decide to live this way. The Amish are not poor. They don't live that way because they don't have any cash. As I said earlier, they got lots of cash. They're some of the wealthiest landowners in a number of states, in fact, a number of countries. South America, in Belize, in Central America, in Pennsylvania, Ohio, a number of states have large Amish communities, and they ain't hurting because they're hardworking folks. They're hardworking folks, and they don't waste money on all the crap that we waste money on. Oh. Okay, enough about the Amish. Hey, John Coates sent this in to me. And it's not a question. He just wanted to show it to me, and I thought you'd like to see it too. This was a list made by Carmen Infantino when he was the publisher at DC Comics. And it's a list of things that will make covers sell, make comics sell if they're on the cover. No surprise to DC fans, gorillas is number one on the list. Dinosaurs, I can tell you, dinosaurs sell a book. Motorcycles, never really thought about that one, but it explains a lot of DC comic covers in the era. A purple background also explains a lot of DC comic covers. A City in Flames. The hero crying. We talked about Weepy Batman last video. A direct question to the reader. What is the startling secret of the seventh superhero, etc.? Yeah, we've all seen those covers from DC. So this is a nice little list. As an aside, I remember visiting DC Comics a lot in the 70s, and one time they were talking about this particular cover of Jonah Hex that sold really, really well, like surprisingly well. There were few returns of this cover, and they thought that it was the color orange, particularly like it was like this burnt orange color on the cover, and I saw editors discussing that this might be the reason because it really popped off the stands. And I was, a fan wannabe, so I didn't point out the fact that probably sold because the cover depicts a cowboy at a watering hole, and standing on the hill behind him is Jonah Hex with a recently pulled out of the ground sign saying "Poison water hole, do not drink." That's what sold that cover because it was so mean. Not the orange, but consequently, a lot of DC comic covers in the following months had lots of orange covers because they thought that was the key. But hey, if you're not familiar with John Coates, check out his book. We've done a number of books on Don Heck. Excellent art book and biography and interview book of Don Heck, a scholarly work. He also did an excellent one on John Severin. So check out John's stuff. Timothy Lindsay, where to start a story? I love this question because it's just like right to the point. Right to the point. Now, there's not going to be anything more about comics, so if you're just here for the comics, go away. This is for writers only. Not go away, but I mean, I'm just telling you. I'm not going to reveal my dislike for, writer X. I'm not going to reveal any fantastic secrets about working at DC or Marvel. This is going to be for writers, serious writers. Yeah, where to start a story? That's the question, ain't it? Where do you begin? Where do you get going? How do you accomplish that? And sometimes it's not where to start it, but when to start it. Do you really want to start your story at the beginning? Or do you want to start your story after the story has begun? Whatever you do, wherever you start your story, it has to intrigue the reader. So maybe you don't want to start your story at the beginning. Maybe the actual beginning of your story, it's not tedious, but it's not as engaging as something that happened later. You can always start your story later and head on back to that beginning to explain the character, what the characters, or simply learn about the character's motivation and past throughout the body of the story. Largely, and I say this over and over again, by what the character does, not what the character says. Now, if you'll indulge me, P.G. Wodehouse knew how to begin a story, knew how to begin a novel. He wrote over 90 novels, and I don't know how many short stories, over 100 at least. And there's an excellent book I've talked about here a number of times, Laughing Gas. And it's the first example I know of like a body switching Freaky Friday kind of story. And it's very funny, and it gave Wodehouse an opportunity to satirize or parody life in Hollywood as well. And if you're stone cold wannabe writer or experienced writer or any of that, please indulge me. I'm going to play you a audio clip. I think it runs 3 minutes, of Jonathan Cecil reading the opening to Laughing Gas, which is not only an excellent opening, but it also discusses how to open a novel as the fictional narrator of the novel tells you about his process.
I'd just begun to write this story when a literary pal of mine who'd had a sticky night out with the pen club blew in to borrow bicarbonate of soda, and I thought it would be as well to have him vet what I'd done in case I might have foozled my tea shot. Because, except for an occasional anecdote in the drone's smoking room about Scotsmen, Irishmen and Jews, and even then I generally leave out the point, I've never told a story in my life. And the one thing all the cognoscenti stress is that you must get started right. So I said, I say, can I read you something? And he said, if you must. And I said, right-ho. I'm trying to get down on paper, I said, a rather rummy experience that happened to me about a year ago. I haven't got very far yet. I start with where I met the kid. What kid? The kid I met, I said, and kicked off as follows. The kid was sitting in one armchair. I was sitting in another. His left cheek was bulging. My left cheek was bulging. He was turning the pages of the National Geographic magazine. So was I. In short, there we both were. He seemed a bit restless, I thought, as if the National Geographic wasn't holding him absolutely spellbound. He'd put it down for a minute, and take it up for a minute, and then put it down for a minute again, and it was during one of these putting it down for a minute phases that he looked over at me. Where, he asked, are the rest of the boys? At this point my literary pal opened his eyes, which he'd closed in a suffering sort of way. His manner was that of one who has had a dead fish thrust under his nose. Is this bilge, he asked, to be printed? Privately. It'll be placed in the family archives for the benefit of my grandchildren. Well, if you ask me, he said, the little perishers won't be able to make head or tail of it. Where's it all supposed to be happening? In Hollywood. Well, you'll have to explain that. And these armchairs, what about them? What armchairs? Where? Those were in a dentist's waiting room. That's where the kid and I met. Who is this kid? He turns out to be little Joey Cooley, the child film star, the idol of American motherhood. And who are you? Me? I said, a bit surprised, for we'd been at school together. Why, you know me, old man. Reggie Havershot. What I mean is, you've got to introduce yourself to the reader. He doesn't know by intuition who you are. You wouldn't let it gradually dawn upon him in the course of the narrative? Certainly not. The first rule in telling a story is to make it thoroughly clear at the outset who's who, when, where, and why. You'd better start again from the beginning. He then took his bicarbonate and withdrew. Well then, harking back and buckling down to it once more, my name, as foreshadowed in the foregoing, is Reggie Havershot, Reginald John Peter Swithin, 3rd Earl.
And there you have it, from the master himself, as read by Jonathan Sissel. That's the building blocks, the necessities of starting any story, is to make it clear to the reader where they are, who they're with, and what the hell is going on. And then you just proceed from there. Now, where and when you choose to start, that's up to you. But the essentials are there. You know, who, what, when, where, and why. The general principles of journalism that get ignored constantly today. So if you have a comment, suggestion, picture your dog or kitty cat or whatever, if you want to get yourself, maybe you want to beat Roberto Dengato's record of 5 questions asked, give it a shot. But you got to contact me at brunobookstore@gmail.com, brunobookstore@gmail.com. It is the most reliable, most dependable way of reaching me. And are you reading My Sister Supreme on Arctunes? Why not? Why aren't you reading it? Anthony Gonzalez Clark and I, and particularly Anthony, are just killing it over there. He's doing terrific artwork. It's a funny story, sibling rivalry, superhero parody. And you can read it free, absolutely free on Arctunes. And yes, there will be a print edition coming soon from Spin Rack, a special Origin issue, a limited print run. We'll be announcing that very soon. So, hey, that's it for me this week. I want to thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, and a lot of you are starting to do that, the subscriptions are picking up pretty briskly, but please subscribe because it helps my reach, and I've seen an impact in recent weeks. We had an uptick in subscriptions, and I'm seeing a lot more views. We're on a steady rise here. If I can get to 8,000 subscriptions, I'm getting very close. I think we can reach out to even more people. And hey, word of mouth, tell your friends about it. You probably know somebody who would enjoy listening to me prattle on with my geeky interests and insider information about comics. Let them know about it. And until then,